the telegraph operator who changed America forever. You think hacking is new? You have no idea. Before you could send a text, before the internet, there were these guys who could literally hack an entire nation with just one finger. These weren't your typical hackers. They were the original information warriors, the unsung heroes of the Civil War. Their secret weapon wasn't a gun. It was the telegraph. And I'm about to show you how they used it to secretly shape the outcome of one of America's bloodiest conflicts. This is the story of how a stream of electricity changed everything. The world before. The tyranny of distance. Okay, imagine this. You send a message, and it takes weeks to get there. A general's desperate plea for reinforcements, a president's urgent command, or even news that your family is alive, it all travels as fast as a horse. This was called the tyranny of distance, and it was literally tearing the nation apart. Information was always old. You could lose an entire battle before you even knew it started. The country was expanding, but it couldn't hold itself together because it couldn't communicate. It was completely disconnected, and somebody needed to fix it now. The spark of revolution, a line of lightning. And then this happened, not with a bang, just a simple click. In 1844, Samuel Morse is huddled in the basement of the U.S. Capitol. He taps out a message. What hath God wrought? It travels 40 miles almost instantly. This moment literally bent the fabric of reality. For the first time ever in human history, communication was no longer tied to transportation. A message could now fly at the speed of electricity. The telegraph was basically the Victorian internet. They started building this web of wires all over the country, a giant nervous system of copper and steel. Market prices, political secrets, personal messages, all flashing across vast distances in minutes. By 1860, thousands of miles of wire crisscrossed the country, but nobody could have guessed that this network, this line of lightning, was about to become the most critical unseen weapon in a war that would tear the nation in two. Introducing our hero, the Knights of the Key. So who were the people who controlled this new superpower? They were the telegraph operators. And get this, most of them were super young, like teenagers. Let's call our guy Charlie. To become an operator like Charlie, you didn't just learn dots and dashes. You had to feel the rhythm, the musical flow of Morse code. It was almost hypnotic. And here's the crazy part. Operators could recognize each other not by name, but by their fist, the unique, almost imperceptible cadence of their sending style. It was like an electrical signature. Every operator had their own rhythm, their own personality encoded in electricity. They called themselves the Knights of the Key, and they knew they were on the front lines of something revolutionary. One historian described them as men of rare skill, unswerving integrity, and unfailing loyalty. They were the keepers of the nation's secrets, the vital link between a command in Washington and a soldier hundreds of miles away. And when war came, young men like Charlie were about to be thrust from their quiet railroad depots into the very heart of the conflict. The high-stakes test, War and Wires boom, 1861. The nation fractured, the Civil War erupted, and the telegraph went from a business tool to a weapon of war. Immediately, and this is important, the Union created the U.S. Military Telegraph Corps. This wasn't a typical military unit. The operators were civilians, not soldiers. They didn't wear uniforms. They reported to one person, the Secretary of War himself. This put operators like Charlie in an incredibly dangerous position. He wasn't sitting in some safe Washington office. He was on the front lines in a crude tent with shells bursting in the distance. The job was absolutely perilous. These guys would string thousands of miles of insulated wire, often under direct enemy fire, climbing trees for a better signal, crawling through muddy fields, doing whatever it took to keep the lines open. They were prime targets. If captured, An operator could be shot as a spy. Over 300 telegraphers became casualties during the war. That's a shockingly high casualty rate for civilians. They were armed with nothing but a telegraph key and their wits, facing the same dangers as the armies they served. A secret weapon. The first hackers. But here's where it gets insane. The real genius wasn't just sending messages. It was listening. This is where telegraph operators became the world's first hackers. Union operators learned to tap into Confederate telegraph lines, secretly listening to enemy communications. It was a digital cat-and-mouse game fought entirely over the wires. An experienced operator could recognize a Confederate counterpart just by his fist, learning his habits and rhythms, like studying an opponent. But the Confederates had their own codes. So the Union took it a step further. Cryptography. Anson Steger's office developed a sophisticated cipher system so effective it was never broken by the enemy during the entire war. Every single critical message about troop movements, strategy, or supplies was encrypted. This meant the cipher operators in the War Department's telegraph office became the nation's first code breakers. And here's the insane part. President Abraham Lincoln himself was basically obsessed. He would spend entire nights in that telegraph office, reading decoded dispatches as they came in, directly monitoring his generals, and even issuing his own commands. He was live streaming the war. An operator like Charlie out in the field might intercept a seemingly random string of words from a Confederate line. That message would fly to the War Department, where a cipher specialist would decode it in real time, revealing a secret plot or a planned ambush, giving Union commanders an almost magical ability to read their enemy's mind. The climax. The message that changed everything. Okay, check this out. This is the moment everything changed. Picture the scene. A Union general, deep in Virginia, is convinced the enemy is weak and preparing to retreat. He's planning a massive frontal assault at dawn, a move that would send thousands of soldiers straight into a trap. But miles away, our operator Charlie has tapped into a nearby Confederate line. He's been listening for hours, transcribing the clicks and patterns, when suddenly, the rhythm changes. A new operator is sending, and he's fast and urgent. Charlie's fingers fly across his key. He's transcribing as fast as he can because he knows what he's hearing. It's not a retreat, it's a reinforcement. A massive Confederate force has arrived overnight and is lying in wait for this exact moment. Charlie knows this information is critical. It could save thousands of lives. He encrypts his message and starts sending it back to headquarters with trembling hands. But then, the line goes dead. An enemy raiding party has cut the wire. With no time to spare, Charlie and a lineman grab a reel of wire and sprint into the darkness. They have to find that break, knowing that every second wasted brings thousands of soldiers closer to disaster. Enemy patrols are thundering nearby. Their hearts are pounding. They find the cut section. Their hands are shaking, and they splice the wires together with raw speed and desperation. The connection comes back. The message gets through. Back at headquarters, just hours before the attack, the general receives the decoded intelligence. He reads it. He understands the trap. He cancels the assault. Thousands of lives are saved. For what might be the first time in history, the outcome of a battle was decided not by soldiers on the ground, not by generals' strategies, but by a stream of electrons flowing through a wire, carried by a young man's courage. These hidden histories are everywhere, buried in the innovations that quietly built the world we live in. The U.S. Military Telegraph Corps handled over 6.5 million messages during the war. They built and operated 15,000 miles of line, 15,000 miles of wire. Think about that. If you love uncovering the stories of unsung heroes, the people who secretly shaped our world, smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next video. And I want to know, What other piece of old technology do you think has a crazy secret history? Drop it in the comments. The echo in the wires. When the Civil War finally ended, the telegraph had given the Union an undeniable edge. While Confederate President Jefferson Davis was waiting days for news traveling at the speed of a horse, Abraham Lincoln was receiving real-time updates from across the entire continent. The operators of the Telegraph Corps were the nervous system of that victory. They were the spies, the code breakers, the hackers, and the silent partners to the most powerful people in the country. And even though they were civilians, they served with incredible courage, yet their contributions remained largely unheralded for decades. But their legacy is all around you, right now. They proved that information, delivered instantly, was a power all its own. They were laying the groundwork for the telephone, for radio, for undersea cables, and eventually for the global network that became the Internet. Every time you send an email, post on social media, or watch this video, you are experiencing the world they first made possible. They were the original hackers, the OGs of our digital world, and the secret heroes who truly connected America. And their story? It's just one of thousands waiting to be told.